There are some things that go bump in the night that can't be explained away with a simple boo. They're unsettling, mysterious, and all too real. Here are 3 scary, true horror stories. These aren't legends. These are 3 scary, true horror stories. It was nearly midnight when Mark realized he should probably head home. He'd been visiting friends, and the last few hours had flown by. The road was long, but he was used to driving late at night. That's why he didn't panic when his car radio suddenly went dead and the streetlights flickered off one by one, plunging him into total darkness. But as he strained to see through the gloom, Mark noticed something odd in his rearview mirror. There was a car behind him, its headlights almost as bright as the moon. And then he saw someone sitting in the back seat. Panic seized him. He swerved slightly, signaling to the driver behind him that he wasn't sure what was going on. But when he turned around, the seat was empty. Exhaustion must be getting to me, he thought. Maybe I did have a few too many sodas. Still, he couldn't help glancing back. Minutes later, the car reappeared in his mirror, only this time the person was closer. The figure was leaning forward as if peering directly at Mark. His foot pressed hard on the accelerator. The image burned into his mind. He didn't dare look again until he pulled into a brightly lit gas station. Quickly, he flung open the back door, but nothing was there. Dazed, he turned to go around, and the worker inside the shop looked at him with amusement. "You're not the first one who's pulled in here like that," he said, shaking his head. Mark drove home the rest of the way without a word, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds, half expecting to see that dark figure climb out of the back seat and follow him. But it never did. A young woman named Helen had finally bought her dream house. She and her boyfriend John were just settling in, and they couldn't wait to start making it their own. It was old, creaky, and full of character, but most importantly, it was theirs. Then, one night, just after midnight, they heard it. Heavy footsteps pacing slowly back and forth along the upstairs hallway. At first, they thought nothing of it. Old houses sometimes make strange noises. But then it happened again the next night, and the night after that, always at the same time. Curious, Helen and John stayed downstairs listening. They heard the steps clearly now, slow, deliberate, and unmistakably human. Helen stood at the foot of the stairs and called out, "Hello?" Her voice echoed back, swallowed by the silence. She exchanged a nervous glance with John, and he nodded, understanding that if there was anyone else in the house, they weren't alone. He walked slowly up the steps, turned on the light at the top, and stepped into the hallway. Empty. He called down to Helen, but his voice sounded odd and distant, as though he was speaking from another room. Startled, he turned around and took a step back. That's when the footsteps started again, right behind him. Helen and John never returned to that house. Their dream home was quickly put back on the market, the new owners unaware of the nightly ritual above the stairs. Amy and her friends had planned a weekend camping trip deep in the woods. They were far from any town or trail, surrounded by towering trees that blocked out the sun and muffled any sound that might have carried from the outside world. But as the night wore on and the fire burned low, Amy found herself strangely uneasy. She sat in silence, watching the flames. When one of her friends joked, "Hey, let's call the forest spirits and see if they'll grant us eternal youth and happiness. He shouted into the darkness, "Hey, spirits of the wood, do you hear us?" Then, to everyone's shock, they heard, "Do you hear us?" whispered back, faint but perfectly clear. They laughed nervously, assuming it was just an echo. But then the voice spoke again. "Amy," it whispered, sending shivers down her spine. One by one, the trees seemed to whisper back at them, calling their names, repeating private words none of them had spoken aloud. They packed up as quickly as they could, racing to their cars in the middle of the night, desperate to get away. To this day, Amy swears she can hear the whispers sometimes, especially when she's alone. What do you think? Are these stories really true, or are they just scary tales that happen to people? Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of my videos. And now it's time to hear some scary stories from our community. Click this link to see the scariest video ever made. Truly horrifying. Don't click this link if you do not want to be scared for the rest of your life. Happy haunting.